It was raining the day Emily lost everything. The cold drizzle soaked the black fabric of her dress as she stood beside the casket, clutching her baby against her chest. The priest's voice trembled over the sound of the storm, the hollow echo of his words, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, barely reaching her ears. Her husband Daniel was gone, the man who had once promised her forever, who had held her hand through every hardship, now lay beneath the heavy rain and flowers that wilted faster than her dreams. The baby in her arms whimpered softly, as if feeling the grief that had swallowed its mother whole. Emily's tears mixed with the rain, her body shivering not just from the cold, but from the crushing loneliness that wrapped around her like a chain. Before we continue with this story of pain, loss, and unexpected redemption, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel, especially if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles life still brings to broken hearts. When the funeral ended, everyone left. The crowd that had once filled her home with condolences and flowers was gone by the next morning. Only silence remained, silence and unpaid bills. Emily had no one left. Her parents were gone, Daniel's family had never accepted her, and the little house they had lived in was already being claimed by the bank. Daniel's death had not only taken her heart, it had taken her stability. For a few weeks, she tried to survive. She sold the few things she could, fed her baby milk mixed with more water than formula, and stayed up at night counting coins. But it wasn't enough. When the landlord came one morning and told her she had a week to leave, she looked around the small room that had once been filled with laughter and knew she had reached the edge. The following Sunday, Emily walked into the church holding her baby, hoping to find comfort. It was the same church where she had married Daniel, the same aisle where she had walked with trembling joy. She didn't notice the whispers at first, but she heard them soon enough. Sharp words from familiar faces. "That's her. She's the one who trapped Daniel. She's back here begging again." She lowered her head and walked to the last pew, trying to pray, trying to hold herself together, but fate wasn't kind that day. As the service ended, Daniel's mother, a tall woman with cold blue eyes, approached her. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed, her voice like ice. "You disgraced my son's memory. Leave this place." Emily tried to explain, tried to tell her she just wanted to pray, but the older woman's anger grew louder. Within moments, the whispers turned to judgmental stares, and before she knew it, she was being pulled by the arm, dragged out of the church she once called her sanctuary. Her baby began to cry as she stumbled in the rain, her dress tearing at the seams. People watched. Nobody helped. The heavy wooden doors shut behind her, sealing her away from the last piece of comfort she had left. Standing on the church steps, her baby wailing in her arms, Emily felt something inside her break. She had nowhere to go, no one to call, and no reason left to believe that life could ever be kind again. For 2 days, she wandered the city streets with her baby wrapped in a thin blanket. She knocked on doors, begged for food, but was met with pity or indifference. By the third night, she ended up sitting outside a diner, watching people eat through the foggy glass. Her baby was weak from hunger. The coins in her pocket were barely enough for a piece of bread. She was about to give up when a black car pulled up to the curb. A man stepped out, tall, sharply dressed, and clearly out of place in that neighborhood. He looked around, then noticed her. Their eyes met for only a second before he walked into the diner. Emily turned away, ashamed of how she looked. Wet hair, tired eyes, clothes that smelled like rain and despair. But a few minutes later, the man came out again. This time he was carrying 2 paper bags. He crouched beside her and held out one. "Here," he said softly. "You look like you could use a meal." Emily wanted to refuse. Pride still flickered somewhere deep inside, but her baby's cry made the decision for her. She accepted the bag with trembling hands. Inside were sandwiches, milk, and fruit. She whispered a broken "thank you," but the man didn't ask questions or linger. He simply nodded, got into his car, and drove away. She thought that was the end of it. But the next morning, when she woke up on the park bench, the same car was parked nearby. The man stepped out again, this time holding a cup of coffee and a small box. "You shouldn't be out here with a baby," he said gently. "There's a shelter a few blocks away. I can take you there." Something about his voice, calm, kind, without pity, made her trust him. His name was Richard Hayes, a name she would later hear often in newspapers and on billboards. He was a millionaire businessman, the founder of a large real estate company known for charity work. But that morning he was just a stranger offering help to a woman who had lost everything. At the shelter, Emily was given a room and clean clothes. She learned that Richard had not only driven her there, but had quietly paid for 6 months of her stay. She couldn't understand why someone like him would care. But over the next few weeks, he would visit occasionally, bringing diapers, toys, or simply sitting in the courtyard talking to her. He asked about Daniel, about how they met, about what she wanted to do with her life. Emily hadn't thought about dreams in a long time, but when she spoke to him, she remembered that she once wanted to study nursing to help people. One afternoon, as she sat in the shelter garden watching her baby sleep, she heard his voice again. "You should go back to school," he said. She laughed weakly, shaking her head. "I can't even afford a bus ticket." He smiled. "Then let me help." She refused at first, thinking it was charity. But Richard was patient. He told her that helping her wasn't pity, it was faith. Faith that she still had something beautiful to offer the world. And so, after months of hesitation, Emily finally agreed. With his support, she enrolled in a nursing program, studied while working part-time at a clinic, and raised her child alone. Years passed, and life slowly began to change. Emily worked harder than she ever thought possible. Every night when she came home exhausted, she looked at her daughter, now a bright, laughing little girl, and felt that maybe the storm that had once destroyed her was also what rebuilt her. Richard never disappeared. He became a constant presence, visiting when he could, guiding her through challenges, never demanding anything in return. But there was something deeper growing between them, something both tried to ignore. It was during her graduation ceremony that it became undeniable. As Emily walked across the stage to receive her nursing diploma, she saw him standing in the crowd, clapping proudly. Their eyes met, and she realized that this man who had once found her broken on the streets had become the reason she learned to live again. Afterward, when she approached him, words failed. He smiled and simply said, "I told you you'd make it." And in that moment, surrounded by applause and sunlight, Emily felt the world finally forgive her. But the true miracle came years later. By then, she had built a steady life, a job at a children's hospital, a small apartment, and a daughter thriving in school. One evening, she came home to find an envelope on her doorstep. Inside was a letter and a small velvet box. The letter was from Richard. "Emily, you once told me that the world can be cruel to those who have nothing. But I've learned from you that even in the cruelest moments, hope survives. I have spent my life surrounded by wealth, but I have never seen riches as clearly as when I watched you rebuild your life piece by piece. You taught me that kindness is not weakness and love is not charity. It's faith. I want you to know that you will never have to stand in the rain again. Not alone. Not ever. Richard." Inside the box was a ring, simple, elegant, with a single small diamond. Tears blurred her vision as she realized what it meant. That weekend, she went back to the same church from which she had once been dragged out. The same steps where she had cried in the rain, holding her baby, broken and unwanted. But this time she wasn't alone. Richard stood beside her, holding her hand. The priest who had once whispered over her husband's coffin now smiled as he blessed their union. When she looked out at the small crowd, some of the same faces that had once turned away, she didn't feel anger anymore. Only peace. Life had come full circle. The same church that had witnessed her fall now witnessed her rebirth. As the ceremony ended and they stepped out into the sunlight, Emily held Richard's hand tightly. Her daughter ran ahead, her laughter echoing through the air. The pain of the past had not vanished, but it had transformed into something stronger. A reminder that even when everything is taken from you, love can still find a way back. So many times Emily had thought her story was over. But it wasn't. It was just waiting for the right chapter to begin. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more stories of hope, kindness, and second chances to light. And before you go, tell us in the comments, do you believe that one act of kindness can change a life forever? Because for Emily, it truly did.